Know the real joy of good living. Move up to quality, move up to Schlitz. Know the real joy of good living. Move up to quality, move up to Schlitz. Refreshing Schlitz, the world's best-selling beer at any price you pay. One of the finest things in life everyone can enjoy today. Know the real joy of good living. Move up to quality, move up to Schlitz. Know the real joy of good living. Move up to quality, move up to Schlitz.
Yes, the joy of good living. The Pabst Brewing Company invites you to treat yourself to one of the finer things in life. Move up and enjoy Schlitz quality today. Schlitz, the beer that made Milwaukee famous.
Know the real joy of good living. Move up to quality, move up to Schlitz. Know the real joy of good living. Move up to quality, move up to Schlitz.
And remember, folks, when you're out of Schlitz, you're out of beer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Junior Darwin.
If you ever plan to motor west, travel my way, take the highway, that's the best. Get your kicks on Route 66. It winds from Chicago to LA. More than 2,000 miles all the way. Get your kicks on Route 66. Now you go through St. Louis, Joplin, Missouri, and Oklahoma City is mighty pretty. You'll see Amarillo and Gallup, New Mexico, Flagstaff, Arizona, don't forget Winona, Kingman, Barstow, San Bernardino. Won't you get hip to this timely tip? When you make that California trip, get your kicks on Route 66.
Darwin. Let's hear it for Junior Darwin. This radio play is based upon the research of Marshall Trimble, Arizona's official state historian. It includes verbal accounts of events that occurred during the last half of the 19th century in Arizona Territory. Today's radio play was written and adapted for the Great Southwest Radio Theater by Bill Alwyn of Coolidge, Arizona. Today, the territory of eastern Arizona, toward the end of the 19th century, remains the home of many Western myths and legends. Apache war chiefs with names like Cochise and Geronimo struck terror in the hearts of early Arizona ranchers and miners. And perhaps no one or no thing was more feared or misunderstood in its day than the elusive Red Ghost. This eerie legend began one night at the Cooper Ranch outside Eagle Creek, Arizona, way back in 1883, when the Apache still roamed the Southwest.
Would you just listen to that wind howl? I say we're in for another big dust storm.
I wish Daddy would get back soon.
It's just the wind. Your father will be back soon. I reckon he's chased Cochise halfway to Mexico by now.
Halfway to all the saloons between here and Silver City. Man can be almost as bad as my Hank.
Jolene!
Never was a horse or a bottle that man couldn't break.
Hush, Jolene. What kind of talk is that in front of Bradley?
Honest talk, I calls it.
Was Uncle Hank really the best horseman in all the territory, Aunt Jolene?
There, you see, Bradley practically idolizes the man, and he's never even met him.
The best horseman and the most stubborn. None too steady as a husband, though. One day he just upped and left. Not the kind of man you want to be idolizing, Bradley.
Bradley, Cooper, it's time you put down that book and go to bed.
But Mother, it's early and I haven't gotten through H yet.
You'll catch H if you don't do as you're told, hear me? You can pick up that book after you finish your morning chores. Go on now. Just listen to them dogs. And horses now, too.
Something's getting into the horses, Ma. Maybe wolves. I better go look.
No, you don't, son. Don't you know there's Apaches about? You stay right here.
What you gonna do, boy? Throw your Encyclopedia Britannica at them wolves? I'll go have a look. You finish looking at the pictures in your book.
No, Jolene, you'll do no such thing in my house. You're here.
That's right. I'm what? I'm a 60-year-old widow woman with a bad heart. You think I'm afraid of what's out there?
We'll go together then.
We'll do no such thing, sister. Someone has to stay here and watch the child.
Who's a child? I'm 12 years old.
Oh, that's right. 12. And already up to H in your new Encyclopedia Britannica.
Just listen to those dogs, Mama. Something's up there. Something big.
Stop it, Bradley. You're scaring me half to death. And Bradley, get away from that window and go to bed.
I want to see Aunt Jolene. I want to...
What was that?
It's Aunt Jolene. Didn't you hear her scream? I've got to save her.
Stay where you are, Bradley. No one's going out there now. Not with Cochise and his Apaches on the warpath.
You heard her scream, Mama. Aunt Jolene's in trouble.
You're staying inside. You hear me, son?
What about you, Mama?
I'll see to Jolene. She's my sister. You bolt the door behind me and don't open it until we come back. Understand?
Yes, Mama. Holy cow!
Bradley, open up!
Mama, what was it? Where's Aunt Jolene?
She's dead.
That same evening, Brad Cooper returned home to the ranch, and in the morning he rode into town and brought back Sheriff Slattery.
That's the way I found her, Sheriff. Flat on her back with her face in the moonlight and her eyes still open.
Not a mark on her. Something must have scared that woman to death.
Wild stallion, maybe?
You know Jolene Culpepper better than I do, Brad. Did she strike you as a woman afraid of wild stallions?
Not on her worst day, Sheriff. There's plenty of hoof prints about.
Bigger than any hoof prints I ever seen. And cloven like a sheep or a goat. I ain't never seen any sheep or goat that big before in my life. And, mind you, I'm from Texas. They look to me like they belong to something, well, almost prehistoric.
Like what?
Like them dinosaur bones they dug up last year in the Dakotas. Didn't you read about it, Brad?
I did, Sheriff. What they found was petrified remains of a brontosaurus.
A what?
A brontosaurus. I seen a picture of one in our encyclopedia.
You're telling me my wife's sister got trampled to death by a dinosaur, Sheriff?
I ain't saying that. Not with re-elections coming up. And we both agreed Jolene wasn't trampled. Didn't you tell me your sister-in-law had a bad heart?
That's right. Doc Simpson told her once there wasn't anything he could do about it, just to never get excited or exert herself.
Doc told me that once too.
But I've known that woman for 20 years, and she wasn't one to take things easy.
Well, she will now. Tell me again, son, what you saw last night from behind that window.
I didn't see any brontosaurus, Sheriff, if that's what you're thinking. I did see something, and it was big.
Well, how big? Big like an elephant, maybe?
But elephants don't have hair. Not like woolly mammoths, Sheriff.
A what?
A mastodon, Sheriff. They got pictures of them in the encyclopedia, too.
Forget the encyclopedia, son. He looks at too many pictures inside of that set of books we bought him last year at the auction.
Never mind that. Let the boy speak. You're telling me last night you saw one of them hairy elephants, son?
What I saw wasn't an elephant, and it wasn't a mammoth. This thing had a big, long neck, and it was covered in long red hair. And there was something else, Sheriff.
Uh-huh. Go on.
There was somebody on it.
What do you mean somebody was on it? Like a man?
More like a skeleton, maybe. A skeleton with a big black sombrero on its head.
Bradley, that's enough.
It's true, Father.
Now, son, I know you had a shock, losing your aunt, but a serious crime has been committed here.
It was a skeleton, I'm telling you. A skeleton or some kind of ghost. And it wasn't no elephant, but the biggest, ugliest, meanest monster I ever saw in my life.
Wearing a sombrero.
The thing on its back was wearing the sombrero.
All right, son, settle down. It stands to reason you saw something. Hey, Brad, didn't Hank Culpepper used to wear a big black sombrero every time he broke a bronc?
That's right. A large black sombrero with a silver hat band. You don't think Hank Culpepper coming back to haunt his wife?
Go ahead and laugh. I saw it, I tell you, I saw it.
Now, Bradley, that's enough. We're not laughing at you, son.
It's my job as sheriff of this county to be skeptical. The last thing Arizona needs is another ghost. We'll never reach statehood at this rate.
Sheriff Slattery was right. A small town in rural Arizona, you know how these panics get started. It wasn't a heart attack or Apaches or gray wolves that killed Jolene Culpepper. It was a skeleton riding atop a great cloven-footed beast. A human brain is an imaginative organ, susceptible to all kinds of suggestive mischief. And so it wasn't but a week later when a group of sleeping prospectors from Clifton were awakened by the sound of thundering hooves outside their tent, followed by a most ghostly scream just before their tent collapsed. In a rare moment of 19th century detective work worthy of a Sherlock Holmes, Sheriff Slattery deduced the origin of that ungodly scream.
So it was you, Bill, who contributed the scream to that fracas.
That's right, Sheriff. Just before the roof of that tent came crashing down, or maybe it was just after, in all the excitement, I don't rightly remember.
The hoof prints match the ones found at the Cooper Ranch, and you did see this red ghost, not just hear it, before you screamed?
I heard it and I saw it. I tell you, Sheriff, it wasn't a sight any of us are likely to forget. The ghost was riding the biggest, orneriest horse I ever saw in my life. A horse covered in long red hair.
Long red hair? Kind of smooth and shiny like lily Langtree's?
No, more like this, Sheriff.
Ooh, where'd you get that, Bledsoe?
One of the miners picked it up over by the water trough the next morning, right next to all them big hoof prints.
Why, that don't look like lily Langtree's hair at all. More like the unruly red locks of the devil himself.
That's what I've been trying to tell you, Sheriff. Now, you've taken down the description from each and every one of us. What we want to know is, what do you intend to do about this red ghost?
At this point, I don't know what I'm going to do, but if I were you fellers, I'd get another tent.
And so the mysterious red ghost still on the loose, and the legend grew with each new sighting.
Yeah, I seen that red ghost over at Dutchman Pfautsch just after midnight last week, Sheriff. It was covered in red hair, had green teeth, and stood 30 feet tall. Stomped and killed a grizzly bear and ate that grizzly bear 6 bites. Bear claws and all.
Well, I seen the red ghost last night down by the Salt River. It was 50 feet tall, stomped and ate a whole herd of white-faced cattle. What do you intend to do about that, Sheriff?
Do? If I were y'all, I'd get me some faster white-faced cattle.
But for all his good-natured incompetence, Sheriff Slattery knew that he had an epidemic of panic on his hands, and he had to do something quick, since he was up for re-election in a month.
Did you get him early?
No, damn it, I missed. Did you see it, Martha?
I saw something early. Some kind of apparition. Red and hairy and big as a freight wagon and taller than who it must have been 60 feet tall.
But did you see who was riding that 60-foot tall freight wagon?
I saw something early, but I won't swear to it.
Why not?
And risk getting thrown in one of them sanatoriums for crazy folks? You saw it too early. There's only one man in this part of Arizona who's ever worn a black Mexican sombrero. He's been gone for 10 years.
Hank Culpepper. And now he's back riding a big red ghost.
That's right. Hank Culpepper, the biggest no-account braggart in the territory.
Well, Hank wasn't just a braggart, Martha. Hank was the best. I can still see him riding broncs like it was last week. Hank had his faults, but there weren't nothing he couldn't ride.
Including a red ghost?
Well, maybe Sheriff Slattery will have a thing to say about that.
But if Sheriff Slattery had any insights on the subject, he kept them to himself.
Hello, Bradley. How's your folks these days? I'll bet you must be all the way up to zebra in that encyclopedia book of yours.
Not yet, Sheriff. I'm about halfway through Y.
Why? Take my word for it, son. Why can be the hardest one. I'll bet by the time you get through, you'll have seen every creature on the planet.
Maybe not every creature, Sheriff. Pa bought that set used, and a couple of the volumes are missing.
Is that a fact? Now listen, son. I guess you know why I'm here.
It's about the red ghost, isn't it?
Damnedest thing, that red ghost. He keeps showing up everywhere now. Last night, he made a surprise appearance outside of Betsy Langhorne's privy. Scared that old widder woman half to death. Okay, now talk to me, son. You and the Petersons, and now Betsy Langhorne. are about the only ones who ever got a reliable look at this thing. And if I'm any judge of rumors in this county, and I am, I'll bet you know what Betsy Langhorne and the Petersons are saying. Got the whole territory a talking about this one.
Yes, Sheriff, I heard.
Never mind what they saw. What I want to know is what you saw that night.
I told you everything I know, Sheriff. It could have been a man in that black sombrero riding that thing, but it weren't no elephant, and it weren't no zebra, and sure heck weren't no horse.
Go on.
Whatever it was something I never saw before in my life. You gotta believe me, Sheriff.
I do believe you, son. I truly do. The question is, will anyone else?
You knew my uncle, didn't you, Sheriff?
That I did. Hank Culpepper was the most prideful man I ever knew. Prideful to a fault.
Is it true what they say? He could ride and break anything in this county with 4 legs?
I reckon it's true. All but one, maybe. And that was the one that killed him. Not outright. Died of shame, I reckon. And he never came back.
You don't believe in big red ghosts, do you, Sheriff?
Sometimes I'm not exactly sure. I tell you what, I do believe that Encyclopedia Britannica. So what do you say we go through the rest of those pictures and see what kind of red ghosts we can come up with before everyone in the territory gets as spooked as Betsy Langhorne on her way to the privy?
But I already told you, Sheriff, I've been through almost the complete set, all except C and half a Y, and the 2 volumes that are missing.
I think if your parents don't object, you and I should take a ride over to that new public library in Clifton tomorrow morning, where I know for a fact they got a complete set. Then, maybe on our way home, I'll buy you a nickel ice cream cone.
Do you think we can, Sheriff?
I'm the sheriff, ain't I? I'll just put that ice cream cone down on my expenses. Nothing's too good for my star red ghost witness.
That night, 3 more unofficial sightings were made of the Red Ghost, and in 3 different counties, one as far away as Lordsburg, New Mexico. And in the morning, while the rest of the territory whispered about ghosts, Sheriff Slattery and Bradley Cooper were eating chocolate ice cream cones and going through the rest of those encyclopedia volumes at the Clifton Public Library.
That's it, Sheriff. That's the red ghost.
Are you sure, Bradley?
Positive, Sheriff. I wouldn't forget a thing like that.
Well, here, let me see that. Uh-huh. Why, of course, you're right. And now it's finally beginning to make a little sense. You know, Bradley, I wouldn't mind having someone as bright as you as one of my deputies.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Now that you know as much, if not more, than anyone about our red ghost, how would you go about catching them?
I'm open to suggestions, Sheriff.
All right, Bradley, here's my plan. Might take several nights, but if we just...
The sheriff explained his plan to Bradley, and then he drew a map with a small X in the center, approximately halfway between all the reliable sightings of the Red Ghost. And then the next night they waited, and they waited, and the night after that. And then on the 3rd night, just about the time Bradley was beginning to lose patience in detective work,
That's him. That's the red ghost.
Only he don't look like no ghost to me, Bradley.
No, he don't. He looks more like that encyclopedia picture I showed you, don't he?
He does at that. Now you wait here while I go down and shut the gate on him.
Nice of him to walk right in this old stock corral. Must have been the water he smelled. That or all the fresh cut hay we brought over from the ranch. That's what the book said they like best to eat. But what's that thing strapped to his back? It looks like a man, more like a skeleton maybe, with a black sombrero tied to his head.
I don't believe it. I mean, I sees it, and I still don't believe it. It's him, all right. After all these years, why, I'd hardly recognize him if it weren't for that silver-banded Mexican sombrero.
You know that man, Sheriff?
I did, years ago, back when we were both 10 years younger.
You mean?
That's right, son. That's your Uncle Hank. The man who said he could ride anything in the territory with 4 legs. Looks like he met his match when he tied himself up to that camel. No wonder the sight of these two scared your Aunt Jolene to death.
You think my uncle tied himself to that camel?
Well, that's my theory, son. My guess is that old camel rode your stubborn uncle straight into the desert. And when his end was near, he just tied himself to that camel so as not to fall off.
But where did it come from, Sheriff? The encyclopedia said camels only live in Africa and parts of Asia.
Yeah, I did some reading on that myself. About 30 years ago, the U.S. Army brought out a bunch of camels from North Africa as draft animals to search out a wagon route up north of here. During the war between the states, most were auctioned off to circuses and zoos, but a few escaped. I guess this one's been living out in the desert ever since.
He sure is one ugly-looking brute, ain't he?
I guess if you would be too if you lived out in the desert all your life. Now don't move a muscle. I'll be right back.
And so the sheriff snuck down and closed that stock gate while the old dromedary was still eating. The next day, the whole town of Clifton rode out to have a first-hand look at the red ghost after 10 years to give Hank Culpepper a proper Christian burial.
You mean to tell me, Sheriff, that's what we've been afraid of all these weeks?
That's the red ghost, all right. Ain't no other in the whole territory of Arizona, I reckon.
Well, it sure don't look like anything I've ever seen before, does it? Sort of like a horse designed by a congressional committee.
Yep. On first look, he does take a little getting used to. No wonder everybody in the country thought they'd seen a ghost.
But how'd you figure it out, Sheriff?
Just your standard 19th century detective work. Well, that is to say, young Bradley Cooper here figured out most of the mystery with the help of a complete set of Encyclopedia Britannica.
It was the C volume that was missing from our set, Mama. Otherwise, I'd have figured it out a lot quicker.
You did real good, son. Your father and I are proud of you. And if she were here today, Aunt Jolene would be proud of you, too.
That was real good detective work, son. The brain like yours, maybe one day you grow up to become sheriff.
Yeah, we certainly could use a good sheriff in this county.
Hey, that's enough out of you, red ghost.
Well, that's the true story behind the legend of the Red Ghost, which happened exactly this way back in 1883, with a few minor embellishments. And by the way, it might interest you to know that the great Apache war chief Cochise settled down and became a law-abiding citizen. Young Bradley grew up to become one of the first U.S. congressmen from the new state of Arizona. And the Red Ghost lived out his life in the Cooper Ranch. And Sheriff Slattery retired to Texas shortly after narrowly losing his re-election. The role of Bradley Cooper was played by Quinton Hart. Sheriff Slattery was portrayed by Terry Murrell. Bradley's mother, Carla Jean, was played by Kathy Pfautsch. Joanne Fox was Bradley's Aunt Jolene and also played Martha. Andy Nelson was Bradley's father, and the role of Bill Bledsoe was played by Chad Gaul, and Early was portrayed by Terry Turner. The first witness was Garie Lewis, and the second witness was Isabella Swain.